It's very Evil Dead.
Yeah, that was a really good Evil Dead nod. I like that. But yeah, so then this makes Goodman say, right, I'm going to go back to the forest and I'm going to walk the area and have a look. And he finds like this horrible end to this tree that seems to have like swept Simon up, apparently. And he's got a voice recorder, hasn't he, in his hand. And he's leaving himself notes. And eventually he says, like, the mind sees what it wants to see. He's a very troubled young boy. And again, I think that he's unwell. And he has bad relationships with his parents. And he's writing it off, isn't he, again?
And this is when he then walks to his car and you see him on the inside of his car looking really unwell. He's kind of got he's very grey and gaunt and just doesn't look well. And then he goes to open his car and as he opens it, it disappears. And you think, that's strange.
What's that about?
Where's that come from? And then we move on to the third case, which H will deal with now.
Thank you very much. So the third case is like a financer or something.
A financer?
Yeah, a financer. So he seems like he's like money orientated.
Like a stockbroker.
Stockbroker or something like that. So he's and he's actually played by Mike Priddle.
Yes, that's the name of the character.
Yeah. So Mike Priddle.
Martin Freeman.
Yes, I get so confused because he's so good. So again, Mike Priddle stood there and he's all dressed up. He's got his tweed on. They're in the middle of absolutely nowhere, like on it looks like on the moors or something like that, doesn't it? It looks like some daylight version of American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, so they're walking along there and they're walking quite fast together and they're trying to have like this interview while they're walking along. And Mike is actually leading him all the way to this like shed, tiny little outhouse in the middle of nowhere where he keeps all his guns. And while they're chatting, the phone keeps going off. It's like a ding, 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 ding. Oh, I've got to answer this. I've got to answer this. I've got to answer this. Which is, again, because of his job. It's like career, isn't it? So Mike was... his story then cuts back as he's telling him that him and his wife wanted a baby, but they wanted career first, and she was in her late 40s by the time they... What was it they say? He goes, we threw a load of money at the IVF, like the way he's speaking. So they had this baby, they were 7 months gone, and she got some bleeding, so then she went to hospital, and he said no, and in like old-fashioned sense, he would stay home. So he stayed home waiting for the birth and everything going on. While he's home... He says that he was played by a poltergeist the entire time he was home. So he was just wandering around a house, which is really good because it's a gorgeous, ultra-modern, million pound mansion, isn't it? And it's all brand spanking new. Yet it's got that grey, dull undertone throughout it, which is like really lonely and cold feeling to the house. Not family feeling, considering he's about to have a baby.
Yeah.
So then he's wandering around the child's, what will be the child's room, and all of a sudden everything from the dressing bed just gets, like all the nappies and everything just gets thrown across the room. And he's like, what the hell? And he's just like completely like, don't know, starts picking them up, and then all of a sudden things start to get piled. So I think it's like all the washing powder and baby powder and lotions just suddenly get piled up. And then it cuts back to Goodman and Priddle having a chat, and they're still chatting, and he keeps, again, his phone keeps going off, and it keeps going off and things, and it's like a few funny things, but every time they cut back to the moors, Goodman then clocks the guy in the jacket again. In a Parker jacket again, and that's
who
really
I think
creepy.
we forgot to mention actually was in a picture as he was walking up the stairs of the second young lad. There was these two boys who we saw earlier in the movie, and this other lad in a Parker whose face you can't see, which I think also was supposed to be seen in the first person when it looked like it was a Parker, and then he got closer to it. It was actually just a mop.
Yeah, a mop. So this Parker chap was then clocked again. Then we flash back again to Priddle's story, and he's on the sofa now asleep in his house, and he starts hearing more commotion upstairs in their bedroom, in the baby bedroom. Still no sign of his wife or the baby. Things are getting smashed around, and brilliant camera work here because you don't see enough to warrant it. So that's more frightening because I can't see what's going on.
It's out of focus.
Yeah, so it's blurred and it's very, very focused on Mike's face a little bit as well, and like over Mike's shoulder. and they use a lot of shadows and imagery instead. So as he's like walking into the bedroom, you can hear it all happening. You can hear banging. You can hear like a lady crying, and all the shadows, but you can't see it yet.
There's also the sheet, isn't there?
And and the sheet is mimicking like a baby and things in the sheet, and then all of a sudden it pans out, and then you can see his wife, who's covered in blood, and she's like screaming, making that horrible like scream, comes right up to your face and says like, "We're dead."
Yeah.
And then that's
what
it.
I like is Martin Freeman in his very Britishness calls her by her name, and says, "What's going on?" rather than being like, "Oh my God, there's some serious blood all over you."
Yeah.
But yeah, very good jump scare.
So jump scares, you've just been given that jump scare, and then it pans back, and obviously Goodman's like, "Oh my God, so what actually happened?" He said, "Well, so ding, and the phone goes off again, and he puts the phone away, and he goes, "Well, so I woke up off the sofa and thought, oh, that I can't believe that really happened, and then I got a phone call literally 3 minutes after that moment of seeing my wife, and I knew what it said." And then that was when the hospital said, "We're really sorry, but she died in childbirth." And he was quite gory about it. He said like what happened, and he said apparently that Bertie didn't look normal. And
Bertie's the name of their son.
Yeah, of their son, and so obviously I'm sat there thinking, well, they're both dead. But the way then he spoke was, "I'm actually really glad my wife didn't survive, because I would hate for her to see what she looks like and stuff, and it's really horrible." And Goodman just goes, "Oh, so," and then they're just trying to have a chat. And then he just grabs his gun out of nowhere and shoots his own head off like a shotgun.
He does. He sure does. I mean, just before this, you get a Parker guy scare.
Yeah.
Where you see the dude on the Parker at the top of the hill, and then next thing, he's right in front of Goodman's face. But then it does cut back to them. And as you say, he legitimately
just shoots
himself in the head, kills himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all three cases. And then you get him coming back to the caravan of Chase, Professor Chase, I believe his name was. Cameron, sorry. To basically say that he thinks that this is all fake. It's all part of a plan to oust him as the number one TV exposer, and he wants his spotlight and this and that. And it gets this is where it gets a bit strange, so you stick with us here because it's kind of confusing, but we will try our best to explain it. You then get, he stands up and he basically says, "You have no idea what you're talking about." He then proceeds to rip his own skin off. Yeah,
because he starts going on like, the brain sees what it wants to see. Yeah. These people, you shouldn't, you shouldn't believe these people. These people are tormented people, and you're just trying to wind me up, wasn't it? And he said, you shouldn't believe everything, and things like that. Things aren't always as they seem, wasn't it?
And that's when he then jumps straight on that, rips his prosthetic skin off, which I think is supposed to look like prosthetic skin.
Yeah.
And it is revealed, as Hannah already said, to be Martin Freeman's character.
I've already ruined that.
In a full suit.
He
then goes and rips through the wall. And when I say rips through the wall, it's as if the wall is made of paper.
Yeah.
He then rips through the wall and they go through a door. And he says, "It's just going to be the four of us. Me, you, Barty, and him." And at this point, we don't know who him is. Oh, and you know who he is. At this point, we don't know who that is.
No.
You then get them to go through, and it's really quickly how amazing this film comes to an end quite quickly.
Yeah.
You then get him going to what's like a lake, and there's a drain, and the two boys that we mentioned earlier are there, and they get him to stop, and all of a sudden he's in school uniform, which I didn't actually twig straight away. I kind of, because he was wearing a shirt and tie pretty much the whole way through the film. Goodman then becomes his sort of junior self. And for one thing we forgot to mention at the start of the film is that his dad, who also suffers with locked-in syndrome, which we learn in the opening scene of the film, is very heavily Jewish and very heavily...
he's hard.
And, and, his sister was seeing an Asian man, and he disowned her because he was seeing an Asian man and this kind of thing. So when he was a kid, he was obviously had a bit of a tough time of it and was bullied quite a bit. And you get these two kids who are just bullies, who then have this tunnel, and they get him to stick a glass bottle by his foot and then throw a rock at it. And then as they're trying to get him to throw a stone, hold a glass bottle by his face while they throw glass at it, which would have done some serious damage. These are like the same bullies from It. Like these, I never had bullies this extreme when I was younger. You then get the first appearance of the character, which what is the name they give him? Like they give him a really mean nickname.
Yeah, he's really, really mean. So they call him Kojak.
Kojak, yeah. And he's basically a young lad who's in the same school as them, who has learning difficulties. And they try and convince him that if you go in this little water tunnel and count all 10 numbers and tell them what the 10th number is, as they've written them on the wall, you can be in our gang. And he's really excited by this. He's like, yay, that's exactly what I want to do. And Goodman almost tries to stop him and says, no, don't go in there. Because he's obviously been in there before and knows for a fact there is no 10th number, and you'll just go in there as far as you can until you
get stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes in and he's counting the numbers, and it's quite sad, really, because he's counting the numbers as you're going along, and you can kind of hear him counting them out. And he then, as it gets narrower and narrower and it becomes more and more like tight, he then has an asthma attack in the drain and dies. And then you kind of, the bullies run off, and he's just there alone, and he kind of thinks about going back in. And then he doesn't. He doesn't
even tell anybody either.
No.
He didn't tell anybody.
And that's Martin Freeman is saying to him, you could have just done anything. Now, I'm not sure if Martin Freeman is playing the devil in this part, and we're still not really sure who he's playing, or whether it's his conscience or whatever.
Or something.
But yeah, so you get that, and then you get a really jumpy moment where all of a sudden he's being led by Martin Freeman's character. And then all of a sudden you turn around and there's the lad with the parka, but he's all decayed.
Oh, he's like a ghoul, isn't he?
Zombified, and he's trying to attack him, and he's sort of he's pushing him towards light. And then all of a sudden at the end of this light you see a bed.
Oh, yeah.
And he kind of gets him on the bed, and then he kind of puts his finger, like the little girl did earlier in the film. He kind of puts his finger into his mouth. And then all of a sudden, as you think, well, this is weird, he's sort of cuddling him almost, isn't he? Like with his finger in his mouth, and you think this has gone a bit weird. It then cuts to him being in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
And he has a tube in his mouth, and there's machines and all this kind of stuff. And he, in fact, as we mentioned twice already in the film, is surprisingly suffering from locked-in syndrome.
Yeah, so he's comatose in his hospital bed.
And you then get the young lad who was in it earlier, playing a junior doctor, Simon, playing a junior doctor, and he's on the phone to his parents, and he's very nervy around talking to his parents, and they obviously make him very tense. And then Martin Freeman comes in, and he's on the phone, and he's taking a very important business call, and he mentions a few bits that have obviously popped up in the film already, like they say that Mr. Goodman tried to kill himself by asphyxiation with his car in his garage, and Martin Freeman actually says, well, you're probably better off just shooting yourself, which obviously is a callback to why his character then shot himself. And then after a few more words from those two, you then get Paul Whitehouse coming in. Paul Whitehouse's character comes in as a janitor and just talks to him, and that's it. And he then pulls over a mirror on top of him, and then you get a view of a window, which has been popping up all throughout the film, and then you get a bird hitting the window right at the end. Yeah. And that's pretty much the end of the film.
And the sad thing is Freeman's character says, just as he walks out the room, the doctor, just as he walks out the room, is, I hope his dreams are sweet, and that's the last thing that is said.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, this was an independent film that was based on a play, so it has that kind of play feeling to it. Initial thoughts, I wasn't overly impressed with the ending. I thought it was going somewhere legitimate, and I don't really like generally that it was all a dream endings. They kind of annoy me a little bit. But Hannah's got some bits on to sort of explain the ending and explain what a few of the bits and bobs mean in terms of, how I thought once watching this film again, you wouldn't pick up anything that means anything, but I think you've got a few bits to sort of prove me wrong on that regard.
Yeah, prove you wrong. Yeah, so looking into it, I agree with Dan on the fact that straight away you were like, oh right, so he's just in a coma the whole time. Like, it's just like, oh really? That's been done before. But when you start looking into it, breaking it down, I do feel if I watched it again and watched it another time, and especially if you're not having to write notes all the way for a film, you would definitely, and I think as a play, this would be much more easier to understand, to get, because you'd get a lot more movement between the scenes, and they would make I call them Easter eggs, but like those Easter eggs of like the dead corpse bird that they kept zooming into in the first case. This little girl all the time, the fact that this spooky girl always puts fingers in their mouths,